Well, as we said, tonight is our mission report for our recent trip to Acuña, Mexico, which means we're going to take another week off of our series working through the Gospel of Mark. So if you were here a couple weeks ago and, we were in chapter 10, working verse by verse, and I kind of left you with a cliffhanger because we were looking at Jesus answering the question about divorce. And we know that that's a hard-hitting subject that can affect so many different people. And we really drilled in on focusing on the emphasis that Jesus was making that divorce is never the ideal. And so we really were looking at the definition of marriage and what does the Bible say about it? What does Jesus think about it? And basically, it was kind of that cliffhanger, and you're like, okay, well, what else? Is there any exception clause? Because in Mark's gospel, he doesn't include one. And what does that mean for maybe a believer who has experienced divorce or is considering divorce? And I did want to leave you at least with that hopeful statement at the end, is that divorce is not the unpardonable sin. And I did want to leave you with that, and we're going to drill in, Lord willing, next week, looking at more of that topic and being more fulfilled. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I'm glad you said that. Yes, thank you. So actually, the cliffhanger will have to wait one additional week because next Wednesday we are doing an outreach event. Next Wednesday, we are going to Lake Logan Apartments, where we're going to welcome and invite them to come to our Fall Fest, which is coming up. And I think we're also going to give them a little gift as well. So we'll give them probably a gift and a flyer where we go do an outreach event. But then the following week, we'll be back in the Gospel of Mark, and we'll answer some of those questions that hopefully maybe you've already wrestled with, and maybe you've studied for yourself and already found the answers. But we'll go over that in a couple of weeks, get back in the Gospel of Mark. But tonight, once again, we are looking at our mission report, and this was our 4th year consistently going specifically to Acuña, Mexico. Hey, Case, can you give me some control over here? My little guy's not wanting to move forward. All right, so destination Acuña. This is our main target area in Mexico currently, but as you'll see through our report tonight, that it goes beyond Acuña, but this is the big city right across the border. Now, of course, for the majority of our lodging, we don't actually stay in Mexico because being right on the border, we have access to a mission partner named Bondred, and she has a mission house in Del Rio, Texas. So we actually, majority of the time, will stay overnight in the mission house, and then each morning we'll travel across the border into Acuña. But what you see there in the other picture is actually a man that we saw just sitting there by a sign as we were getting one of our gas fuel stops on the way to Del Rio. And, we were really just talking about the mission trip, and then we saw someone that literally had practical needs right in front of us. And as the group was talking, we just fueled up. We used the restroom, and we're about to go back onto the highway, and we're all talking, should we go and talk to this individual? Should we pray for this individual? Maybe give a gift or meet a need there? Now, of course, you don't have to do that for every single person you ever see on the side of the road, but we were thinking, we're going on mission. The mission doesn't have to wait for Acuña. Mission can start wherever we're going. It can be literally right on the side of the road right here. And so we all felt that the Lord was leading us to go and stop. So right before we get on the highway, we just kind of go to the side of the road, and I walk over there to him. I get to talk to him a little bit. I can tell that he's had some type of physical issues because it was really hard for him to speak. I was able to understand and discern that he had a heart attack, at least somewhat recently, that was seeming to cause some issues with his speech. But I asked if I was able to pray for him, and he let me pray for him. I shared the gospel with him, and we gave him a little gift, which had, I think, food, water. I can't remember everything. We had a little gift basket that we kind of made for him, and then we actually even had a little gift card that we were able to give him. So he had a gift card with some food and water, and I even told him that we were specifically going to Mexico on a mission trip, and one of the few things I got from him was obviously that he had a heart attack recently, but the other thing was that he was wishing us well on mission. And so he wanted our mission to go well. So it was just really, really cool just to have that little encounter before we even get to the formal destination of our mission. So we traveled down Saturday morning, and we left from the Road Ranger right there was it Marion? That's Marion considered, right? So in Marion right there, we all left a little after, actually, yes, that was technically your house. But anyway, right around a little after 6 a.m., we left on Saturday morning. We got in super late, probably around close to 1 a.m., I think, technically Sunday morning. And so the next day, we've learned from our mistakes of the past, where we would try to get across, or we would get into Del Rio after traveling all day, whether that's by driving or airplane, and then we'll just go right across the border, and then we'll do an event that night and be there till 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and it's just not feasible for us. So what we've learned is to try to take the very first morning slow. And so what we did the first morning is we went to church with Bondred, which you'll hear me say Granny B a lot because she goes by Granny B to everybody. And so we went to church with her in Del Rio, Texas. And then after we went to church, we got a little bit of time for fellowship and to kind of rest up. And we met up with Jazz here. And some of you are probably familiar with Jazz. She's the one that's done outreach ministries for strippers and prostitutes, women in the red light district. She actually will specifically do outreach to them and minister to these women specifically and help try to get them out of that world and share the gospel with them. And so we got to see her, see what she's been up to, because she had a fall. It was last year, right, where she had broken her feet. Was it her femur? Yeah. So I know she was living in Acuña, Mexico, and there was some issues with the rental properties, because some of the rental people aren't as moral or ethical as you might hope sometimes. And then also she had this injury that happened, so she's been in Del Rio recently, and so we got to see her and catch up with her here before we went across the border. But then that evening, we did go across, so our very first day there, we did get across the border, and we went to the southern side of Acuña. So this is actually just right outside of Acuña in Santa Maria. And you can see right there on the building, that's the name of their church right there, is Iglesia Taller del Maestro, which I believe is the Master's Workshop, if I remember the translation correctly. And this is Pastor Lolo's church. This is a church that we've connected with, I think, the last 3 years, I believe. We've been connected with them. This is a smaller church in a very impoverished area. If you remember a couple of reports ago, when we were going and distributing food, and you were literally seeing some of the houses that all they had was a dirt floor, you can see through their walls because it's just particle boards and brush, debris put up together, trying to just keep housing. They literally have bonfires in their house to cook their food. This is that region, and they are doing some really good work trying to minister to these people and help them despite their own financial difficulties and struggles. And you can see that they were willing to have this outreach event, and you can see for a Sunday evening of something they don't always do all the time, and actually a pretty good attendance. And you'll actually see in the next photos a lot of children and younger families that will be there for the next generation that can hopefully continue to build not only the church but also the kingdom in their community. And so I was able to preach that evening as well as have Jose there, and you'll see Jose a lot. Jose is our translator. He's the one that actually leads Mexico Missions Ministry. He's the one that he's like our guy that kind of coordinates with us, and he's the one that we're talking to weeks, months in advance, trying to make sure that we have a agenda, a plan of how are we going to target these areas and be the most effective. And so we couldn't do it without Jose and his wife, Olga, but he's translating there for me. And in this message specifically, for those who were here when we've been working through the series on the life of Elijah, I shared the message specifically focusing in on after Elijah had the awesome Mount Carmel moment. After that, we see that he goes from being on the mountaintop to running in fear, hiding in a cave, wishing that he would die, and kind of just, expressing that same teaching about how you can be a mighty prophet and you can still find moments where you're just super low. You can find yourself in the dark, but even in those dark moments, we have our God who is with us, and our God is a light shining in that dark place, and he can overcome the darkness. And so I shared that message, and it was tweaked a little bit, of course, for time and for translation purposes, but some of you are familiar with that message that I shared. The same event, you can see here that a lot of children that are actually participating in this outreach event for a small area that doesn't have a ton of people, and most of them are having to walk to even get to this area. And so what we were able to do, well, before I go to some of the things we were able to hand out to them, it was so heartwarming seeing these individuals, these kids here. They had a time where they all were singing "Jesus Loves Me" in Spanish. And now, obviously, many of us probably know the song by heart, but just to hear all of these children crying and singing the song to the Lord in a different language, and you know that they're, regardless of language, we're all worshiping the same God. It's just really, really touching. It's just a moment I really, stuck out to me as we were listening to this. But when we were there, we obviously got to give away some things. You can see that some of them are like some stuffed animals. We gave a ton of backpacks away throughout this trip, not just here, but in some other events and some other places that we went. So you can see some of them just getting some of those gifts, and some of them got them as a prize for what Olga was doing with the kids. One of the things that Olga was doing, and I said she was just awesome with the kids. I'd never got to see her interact and lead the kids, but she was teaching them the 10 Commandments, but she was using like these like hand signals, which I maybe other people have learned it that way. I'd never learned it that way. But you basically, they do like, one, and then they say like one God, or they say, what is it? Un Dios, right? And then the next one, then they have two, and then you see like this guy is bowing to this one, and like you're not supposed to bow to other gods. And so but they do that for every single finger, and it teaches them the 10 Commandments. And so they were learning it, reciting it, and then after they think they had it, they would come forward, and if they could do it, then they would get a prize. And so you see some of those kids with the prizes after doing it, and they were just so good. They were listening to my entire sermon and super attentive, not only the kids, but the parents, both of them just really engaged, but then the kids, so well interacting with Olga and what she was doing there. It was funny though, we had a running joke the rest of the week, is there was one kid that was super like, he thought he knew it, right? And so the first one he says, un Dios, he got that part. And the next one he says, dos Dios, which means two gods. And we're like, no, not two gods. That's not the second commandment. And so that was a running joke throughout the week, is we're like, dos Dios. But anyway, so you can see here this table, tons of backpacks. You can see here me and Alan, which Alan is Jose's son, getting a lot more involved, by the way, in ministry and being more passionate towards missions. And we've actually got to see him actually grow in the ministry and a heart for these things. And I got to have some really in-depth conversations with him. Actually, specifically on this day, we talked for probably over an hour or two just on ministry and apologetics and matters of the faith. So really cool to see some things going on with Alan. But we were able to give away these backpacks to these kids. You see Mike there giving away some of the balloons. We have Olga as well as Sarah. I think they're the two balloon makers primarily. They both have these air pump, or I don't know what are the air pumps, electric pumps, but they can just shoot them up really quick and then they immediately start going. And I'm not the arts and crafts person by any means, so I stay away from that. But you see Mike there giving away some of those things. You see Russ putting on his belt. No, that's a hula hoop. No, but we were playing a game with the hula hoop where the kids would have link arms, and then you have to like crawl the hula hoop through the body, and then we had the adults actually compete in it, the guys versus girls. And so that was fun. So whenever you get the adults involved there. So that was the first night. So once again, first day was Sunday with the church in Del Rio, and then we went across the border for that late night event, outreach event in Santa Maria, which is the first church that we support. We were able to give them a financial gift, which you'll notice each of our 4 churches that we are specifically prioritizing for missions, they all got financial blessings as well as some of the things you might see us doing here. So all of them were also given ongoing assistance to continue to multiply what they're doing in their areas. But here, so if you think of Santa Maria on the south side, right outside of Acuna, we now have Palabra de Vida in the northern, probably the closest to the actual border itself. And this is with Pastor Lorenzo. And someone remind me, Palabra de Vida, that is Word of Life? That's what I thought. I couldn't remember if it was Word of Life or Book of Life, but that'd be Libro, right? Libro de Vida. So Word of Life is what their church name is called. And we've already partnered with them before. I've got to preach at their church in the past. We've given money to help with his office, I believe, in the past. And there was something else we've also done with them, if I can remember. Oh, thank you. Yes, we were able to build shelves because they have a huge storage area that supplies for multiple different mission groups, including Jose with this ministry group, where they literally have all of these things, where we get a lot of these backpacks and a lot of these supplies that we're able to go and take and give to all of the kids in the different communities. A lot of that is stored here at this church. And so this is Pastor Lorenzo super willing to continue to engage the community and help in different ways that he can. And so what we did specifically this time is they had this big cafeteria room, which they also, I believe, use for their children Is that correct? During service? I think it was for their children during service as well as their cafeteria area. So this is separate from, if you look right through this window, right through that window is their actual building of their church. But in this big room, we painted for them. We supply all of the materials to paint this room for them. So we covered this for them and blessed them in that way, as well as we took them out because this was actually Independence Day for them. And so we actually blessed that family and took them out for a nice meal at a restaurant in Mexico. So we got to really fellowship, get to know them a little bit more as well. Because sometimes it's not just that you do a project or give them some money and you leave. It's that you actually build relationships with them, that you get to know their hearts for ministry, who they are as people, and then that you can build these lifelong connections and where you see things not just 1 year at a time, but you're thinking, decades in advance. So here, after working on the job, we also decided to try the art world. And we're thinking that this might be more long-lasting in time than maybe the farmer and his wife. So a little thing about this, so this is Linda's best shot at frowning because literally I had to take so many photos so quickly because she immediately starts bursting out laughing. And now Russ was just stone cold faced the whole time though. So this is right outside of where we were just painting. So in the blue building is where we were painting. Right above it, as you can see here, this is a mission house project. So what this is that they have been building for now a period of time a house for missionaries. So that would literally be for potentially us in the future if we ever for some reason didn't have a connection or maybe Bondred's mission house was full because there's other missionaries doing other work. We have access to another mission house. Or for some reason we really need to be in Acuna and we don't want to worry about dealing with border crossing as often. We have this access, and so this is something they've been working on, and this is actually something we gave some support to this time as well before we left to hopefully move forward on this project. But this is going to be really helpful, especially as we have more materials and things that we might need to keep in Acuna. Like I said, if we're trying to go further into Mexico, which you'll see we actually went a lot further south this time than we ever have before as a team, these things would be more accessible if we're already across the border and we could just go down. So this is the Mission House project, and if you see, this is their, I guess you would call it a staircase, but it's not stairs, if you notice. It's a ramp, and it's more steep than even it looks to you. In fact, I'm able to sit at the very top without anything, and I can slide all the way down. And it was funny, so I think some of the boys were doing it while we were painting, and then I decided after we had finished, I got to try it. So I went down, and then they got a blanket out, and then we started going down really fast. But then after I did that, then we have Jose, our translator, doing it. And then their pastor, Lorenzo, even goes up there and goes down. And so I didn't put it on the PowerPoint because then you have to mess with video and stuff like that. But I do have videos of that. If you want to see people going down this ramp, we have some of those. So that's some exciting things looking forward to with Pastor Lorenzo, not only what we were able to do just with the painting project and blessing them with the meal, but also looking forward to what they're doing with missions in the future. So here, I didn't have a lot of photos, or from what I saw from the other team members posting, of Alex inside this year. I'm not saying that we didn't take any, but I just didn't see any. But this is Alex's casa. This is actually his house roof. And what we actually did this year, so Alex, for those who don't know, he's the first translator that I ever met going into Acuna. And he's a guy that, though he's not officially a part of Mexico Missions Ministry, he basically is, an honorary member doing all he can in different events. And so he translates for us. He taxi drives. He'll help bus us places. He gives us some of the best food in Mexico when we do go out to eat places. At least for me, there's more safe options because my palate is like a 5-year-old. And so this is a little bit safer than some of the other areas for food. But yeah, I think Russ said it best that, when Jesus was doing ministry, he had certain places, certain homes that he could really just rest in and he felt safe in. You think of like a Mary, Martha, Lazarus situation, or you think of like Simon Peter's house in Capernaum as like home base. This is kind of like that in Acuna. This is that safe place when you know that you have a lot of activities going on later in the day. We're going to go to Alex's house, take an hour, get some food, maybe just rest, take a nap. You'll see Russ, he'll disappear, he'll go into the bedroom for an hour or so. But just because Alex is someone that gives us rest, that doesn't mean that we don't also pour back into him and want to support him. And so what we found out is that Alex actually has had a pretty severe leak recently. While him and his children are sleeping, there's actually water that's pouring down on them in their beds. And so what we did is we supplied, once again, some materials to finance it. If you see everything white on this roof, basically everything white there was not there previously, and this is a paint-type sealant that is hopefully going to help solve that issue. And so if you just remember, earlier in the day, we were already here, not the farmer and his wife, but we were here working painting this morning. Then we took Pastor Lorenzo and his family to that meal. Then right after that, we go straight to Alex's, and then we're back at it again on Independence Day, working on Alex's house. After we finish Alex's house, though, we have another event that evening. And here, this is the first time that our team went here, but this was such an awesome experience, and I know that this is some place that I think our mission team definitely wants to prioritize moving forward. This is a migrant shelter. This is where you have individuals who are either have been deported or are hoping to be able to gain some type of citizenship or get access to go across the border to the States. And so we were able to speak with so many different individuals. And do you remember how many actual countries were represented there? So what's so cool about this is you have 6 or 7 countries represented here. So if these individuals, if they go to the States, then obviously they get to go where they're hoping to potentially go. But we know that there are going to be a percentage of them that probably won't end up being able to go there. Some of them will end up going back to their respected countries. But what we're able to do here is not only are we able to, as you can see here, we're able to give some blessings. You see there's backpacks, there's a lot of clothing, just food, drink items, just a snack, things like that, all giving to them. And that is, by the way, with our team as well as Pastor Lorenzo, who that's the one that we painted earlier that same mornings and took to lunch. This is his church that's been doing this regularly, going to this area. And they keep asking, they say they want the Christian churches, they want the missionaries back, they want to hear hope, they want to hear about Jesus. And so these are people that are literally wanting to hear what Christian missionaries have to say. And so we're coming there, we're meeting specific actual physical needs, but then, this is Pastor Lorenzo right here speaking to them, but then we were actually given the opportunity to speak to all of them sitting there, and some of them you see here, there's a decent amount right here, but then there were some that were sitting a little bit further back you can't see in the picture, and some were coming in later. But whenever I got invited to come up there and just introduce myself, I gave the gospel presentation to every single person there, and it was translated. So literally every single person from 6 or 7 countries is getting the gospel given to them. And then after that moment, we then offered them, as they were going to start coming to the tables here, they'll start lining up right after we talked and we had an opening prayer. What they started doing is after they'd line up, they'd come and they'd talk with us. And so this is me and this is Mike right here, and we're talking and praying for this individual. But we got to have multiple prayer meetings, gospel conversations, hearing their hearts, hearing what they're going through, and we were able to literally share Christ with them, have deep conversations, and we spent, maybe, was it 2-3 hours there? We were there late, 2 hours. So we were there for 2 hours, basically, just spending time with these people, giving them, some supplies, showing them that we love them, that we care about them, and like I said, and then praying for them. And there were some of them that had some heartbreaking stories. One group was talking about their daughter that literally died. She drowned as they were trying to swim across. And so they're dealing with that loss and with whether or not it was their fault, and just some really serious ministry counseling moments that we got to be a part of it and help hopefully give some hope and some light in this situation. But once again, super awesome opportunity, so many good conversations. And I know that just in the conversations I had, they were asking great questions, and we were hopefully able to give some good answers there. And I know that so many other team members were having good conversations in different parts of the shelter area. So really awesome opportunity that we got to do with Pastor Lorenzo and his church family. So then this is the next morning. Next morning we went to Farina's, and we call it Mexican Crown Brew because everyone knows that we have this coffee shop in Marion called Crown Brew that some of us will go to and are familiar with. This is as close to Crown Brew as you get in Mexico, we think. So we went there this morning, and this is kind of where we started talking about our evangelism strategies this day because we're about to go with Pastor Morales, which is our third church that we are teaming up with, and we're just kind of game planning of how we're going to approach our door-to-door visits, and then hopefully be able to kind of give some guidance for the church as a whole of what things you want to try to prioritize when you have these conversations, and what to do if basically they're not really receptive to wanting to talk, or they don't want prayer. Just kind of some things to think about before you just go door to door, and there's these different variables. So we got together, fellowship there for a little bit before we headed over to Pastor Morales' church, which is called Templo Dios Creator, which is the Temple of God Creator, is what that church translation is. And here you can see a decent amount of people. This isn't everyone that's there. It actually kind of goes around in this area, and there's some even over here, and some not even in the room at this point. But you can see a pretty good turnout for a hot, Tuesday? A hot Tuesday in the middle of the day. We're probably, 90 plus degrees at this point. In the middle of the day, about to go to a neighborhood that we have had prostitutes literally say they would not live there because of the danger associated with this community. These church members in Acuña are all willing to get out on a Tuesday afternoon to go do this in the heat of the day in a dangerous neighborhood. And I just was so encouraged by their willingness, because I think we ended up having 25, 26 actual people there to do this evangelism day. But I was just saying to them, how thankful and how, just blessed I was to see how many people's hearts were willing to go and share the gospel with other people. Because just imagine, how many churches do you think would do something like this in the States? I mean, I'm sure we'll find some churches that would, but, to do something this, intentional, like I said, in these contexts, this, in everything that's going on with the community and the day and the temperature, all these things. But we had a great turnout. And so here you can kind of see majority of the group now. Obviously, I think you have is this Russ? I think maybe took the photo, so you'll see Russ in it. But you see a large group here, and in this area where we're praying right now, this is basically kind of like the heart of this community. And so what we're going to do after, we'd already kind of gone through the training of what to do, and then we had already decided what 4 teams. We basically broke up into 4 different teams. After we pray here, we send all 4 teams into 4 different areas, 4 different directions basically to cover this community. And Pastor Morales is right there, and I believe he's the one that led us in prayer before we actually started taking our groups into the neighborhoods here. But what's cool about this area, not only is it in the heart of the community, but also right here on Thursday, they had an event. So this was Tuesday, and in a couple days, they actually had an outreach evangelism event there with preaching, with food, with games for kids, and literally, there's a couple photos you see later of people turning out for this. And so we have that first initial contact, inviting them to church, praying for them, giving them some things, and then you also see that next connection of, and here's some opportunities for you, here's some kid activities, different things like that. And so you see here, this is one of their church members, or a couple of their church members. I believe they were husband and wife. But the box that we're carrying there it's packages of food that will last them for 4 portions each bag. And so for a lot of households, we were given a couple bags a house. So that's 8 different meals being provided to a very impoverished community, on top of us giving them a gospel tract, which has a specific sticker on it that has the church, which is right in their neighborhoods, name, info for phone contact information, and service times, including a specific service for their children. Because many of these children, by the way, are left during the day. Because many of the parents will have to go to work, and they don't have the resources that we have in the States, or not as many as we have. And so a lot of times they will just leave their children. So you'll see, it's not uncommon to see a 3 to 5-year-old just walking out of their house completely by themselves with no parent. That's why, once again, there's danger there, because you'll see people come in and try to take children. But we were able to go there and provide food, the gospel track, information about the local church. We were also giving some like candy and some balloons, which I think you'll see in the next one, giving to some of these kids and their families and things like that. And so you can kind of just see a little bit more about the community. You'll notice that there's a lot of just rogue dogs out there, very friendly, but you'll just see just a lot of them as you're going throughout Mexico. Let's see here. Here's just some interactions you can see. Obviously, you don't take too many photos when you're doing this because you are talking to the people, having real conversations. You're praying for them, and so you're not really trying to make it a photo op. You're trying to serve, but you also want people to know that you are intentionally doing mission work. So it's kind of that balancing act of doing both and here. And so you do see a little bit of what's going on. You can see these two children here with their mother. You can see some of us interacting here. A little child balloon and Coke there, and you see some of our mission team here and speaking with these individuals, and then a group of kids there. And see, there was something else I was wanting to share about this. What was it? And guys, if you guys remember something specifically about this. Yes, there was something else I was wanting to say about it, and I wish I could remember. What was it? Well, I don't want to hold us up. But anyway, so we had so many positive encounters when we... Yes, Mike, do you have something?
I was just going to say, maybe you're getting there, but how prepared that church.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was wanting to say. Yes. So last year, we took this church... I'm so glad you said it because I really didn't want to... This is one of the really exciting things about what we got to see this year. And so last year we took this church to this neighborhood, and we kind of did something similar, but it wasn't as intentional. We didn't give any formal training beforehand. And we had all these gospel tracts, everything prepared exactly how we did it this time, and we had the food. But the first time we went, once again, it still went really well. We had people professing in Christ, receiving Jesus on their doorstep, being saved as we were seeing happen this encounter as well. And pretty much every encounter we had was positive, at least in our team. I know there was a couple people that weren't as accepting as some of the missionaries, but generally speaking, we had a lot of positive encounters. But what was so encouraging, though, is we come in here giving the training in their church before we go out to the neighborhood, and I'm thinking, similar to last year, I'm probably going to need to take the lead. I'll probably do a lot of the talking, and maybe some of them might offer a word or two, or they'll hand out the food at least. We get to the first door, at least on my team, and literally, men and women from their church are right in front. They're sharing, they're talking, they're having full-blown conversations. I see one guy preaching, sharing the gospel with them, and they're nodding, receiving, understanding what they're saying. They're already praying with them, and like the whole meeting's already done. I'm like, I don't even have to be here. And that is one of the most exciting things, is this is a church that had never done it before. Literally, the pastor last year, I was looking, because I was thinking that they had maybe done it before, and they'd never done it, and he was barely talking, and I was like, is this pastor going to say anything? Now, literally every single one of their members that are here is like a full-blown missionary, ready to go, preach the gospel, pray for people, meet needs. It can really relate where it's not just forced conversation. They're really having conversations here. And so that's what's so cool to see fruit and see how it's not just go one time on a mission trip. It's you see this follow-up. You go back and you see what's happening, and you see the growth in all of these individuals in their church. And so that was, I'm so glad you said that, Mike. Yes, so that was so encouraging to see. And specifically, in my group, these two, like I said, this couple right here, he was regularly preaching, sharing the gospel, and both of them, a lot of times I think it would be like if it was a woman that would answer the door, she would kind of take the lead, and then if it was a man, then he would usually take the lead there, and then of course Jose was translating, and we had a translator in each of our groups, by the way. That's why we had to break up the way that we did. We broke up where we had at least one translator per each team. But yeah, super encouraging to see what was going on with these churches and with the neighborhood there.
From that time last year, and for 9 months, they've been evangelizing.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing this on and on and on.
Yeah.
Every month when we got them, they what they've been doing. They didn't know anything. They never done it. Mm-hmm. We come back thinking that's where we were at, and it's what they had been doing. So we just jumped in with them.
Yep.
So exciting.
Yep. So this is the same day. So once again, we did training. Then we went to the church, went to the neighborhoods. We're there for a couple hours evangelizing in the neighborhood. Then after that, we come to this is our fourth church now, I believe, right? So this is the fourth of the 4 churches that we are partnering with, and this is Fuego de Dios, which is the fire of God. And their pastor is Pastor Raul, which he is right there. Pastor Raul, super nice guy. And this is a church I think that we really, for the first time, made contact last year, I think, right? Because I hadn't been there, I don't think, previously until last year where we met Alex and we met some of those. Okay. So with our team, though, at least in the last 4 years, this is the first time. And so we partnered with them last year, and we got to know them and meet some needs. But here, you can kind of see the perimeter here. So this is all white now. This was a fence or stone, stone fence that was basically just, this color. And whenever you have, dirt and sun, it's not the most eye-appealing or engaging. But we came and we supplied, once again, some material for this. And we came and we painted. So this is the second fence. So going this direction is the fence you were kind of just seeing in front of the church. This is actually their bathroom area, this building over here, which is where you see Mike here, Pastor Raul, this is Mike again, and then Jose, Mike, and me. So we basically, after we had done the evangelism event, we went over to this pastor's, and this is what they were asking us to do. And so what we did is we had some of our team that was outside painting the entire fence area. And then we had on the inside, we had Mike, Jose, and Pastor Raul making these dividers for these toilets here, if you can see. See, here are the dividers. But before, you can see Mike kind of measuring and putting on the wall here. You can see the privacy that they have at their church. So just imagine, this is what you have to choose from, and this is their only bathroom, correct? So this is men, women, children, and this is your options, basically, for a restroom in an area that is, once again, not the easiest to get to. You have a lot of people that are going to be walking to get to this church even, and this is what they have. So, of course, it wasn't, a perfect, full fix, but it definitely at least is to give a little bit of privacy, to help out a little bit moving forward. We're trying to do gradual things to help make a difference here. And so while some of our team was helping finish the entire fence on both sides, we had Mike and Jose that finished these dividers here in the bathroom area. And up here, yeah.
They don't keep kids on the toilet. For some reason, we've asked several times. We don't know why. Well, there's no seats. You don't have no seats.
Yeah, you heal a lot of marriages that way, Russ. That's what that is. But yeah, so up here though, you see Russ here hugging Alex, and the way that Russ posted the photo, I think, had me right here looking tired and on my phone, so we got rid of that part. But in this photo here, you have Alex, which if you remember, which you probably won't, but last year we met him actually at this same place, because not only is it a church, but it's also kind of a rehab facility that's helping individuals trying to get clean. And Alex, we literally met last year, and he was really new to being there, super skinny. You could tell he had a pretty rough past, and now we see him where he's healthy, he's happy, he loves the Lord, he's literally praying and preaching Christ, really active in the church and fully sold into what Pastor Raul was doing there. And we've got to meet some other people that have also been connected to the same ministry. But it's once again so good to see that follow-up from a year in between, to see how much he's grown in just a year's time. And he remembers us being there, talking to him, praying over him whenever he had only been there. I can't remember if there's any more of the story. I think he also was hallucinating for a period of time, was he not? Whenever we first met him last year. I think he was just coming off of everything. And I think he had even told us in his story that there had been multiple times where he had tried to get off. And he was off for a very short amount of time, then he'd go right back. But this is by far the longest that he's ever been fully clean, doing good for not only, himself, but for his community. So really, really encouraging things there. And once again, every church, we were also able to give a financial blessing and prayer before we would leave every single church there. So then we moved to the next day, and the next day we went to Guadalupe Victoria, which is an elementary school, and we usually try to connect with some of the local schools there, and so far we've had a lot of the school's been really receptive of having Christian missionaries there, and they basically always are saying keep coming back because we come and we supply, once again, school supplies, backpacks, a lot of different things. And this morning that morning we got to serve them breakfast. So we were just helping, because a lot of times the family, the parents, are the ones that are trying to serve them the meals. You know, they have parents that were stay-at-home parents that will come in and they'll just help serve all day the meals. And so we came and helped set up and distribute the meals. And then also for the parents that were believers that wanted to have that, or even had some kids that had some different heart issues, different things like that, we got to pray with the families, the parents, and some of their students afterwards as well. So we got to be at another school this year, and we've been to this school specifically before. So we did the puppet show, I believe, a year or so ago, where it actually shared the gospel. It shares Jesus in a puppet show. So this is one of those schools that we're following up with once again, and we were able to once again serve and pray with some of the family members and students. Then after we were at the school, we went to a ministry which is called Aliento de Vida, which means breath of life. This is the same ministry, essentially, that used to be called Pan de Vida, which is bread of life. So it's Joaquin, which he'll be on the next slide. I don't think he's in this one. But Joaquin and some of his family members, they run this ministry, and what they do is they just do a lot of outreach to children. They offer food to those who are hungry. And so what you'll see is that what we end up doing with them, which this is us in the parking lot of it, we go to a local hospital, and there we have two teams that some go in the hospital and start to pray for individuals, and then we have other individuals that are outside of the hospital where Aliento de Vida is literally giving food and giving supplies to those who are homeless and hungry. Some of them are on different substances, of course. But you see Linda and Heather here who are helping prepare some of the sandwiches that are going to be taken. But their ministry is really active in trying to meet felt needs and proclaim the gospel. So here you see some of the activities going on outside. Obviously, some of them are, actually here is me praying a blessing over the food. And within the prayer of the blessing of the food, I'm pointing them once again to the gospel. The gospel is being saturated throughout our entire trip. Anytime that we're praying or talking with people, the gospel is there. And it's basically pointing them to how this is a small provision of a greater provision that God has given us through Jesus Christ. And this is just, once again, evidence that God sees them, cares about them, and is meeting their needs right in front of them. But you see Sarah here, who's also giving away. We see some diapers. So there's other supplies for families, for children that are being given away here. We see Russ and them praying. I don't know the specific context of what's going on here. Russ, I don't know if you can remember much more. I know that she specifically, I think, had been met in the past through Heather, and I think she was struggling with substances in the past, and I think now she was actually helping with the ministry. I think she just happened to be there, and I think she was also helping us in translating and also like helping pass out and distribute. So once again, you see someone who was struggling with some type of substance and now is seeing us, is thankful and is excited to see us again, hugging Heather as soon as she saw her, and then helping, and then it was super excited and waving goodbye to us whenever we left. Just really, really cool once again to see another person that we see their lives changing for good. Then you see in the hospital here, I didn't take any photos, of course, here. I took mainly from what I saw from Jose, which I think Jose was in our group, so I think that's all I had. But you see, we went in the hospital. She was kind of our tour guide here. I believe she is, what is the term? Yes, she is a social worker, and she loves when missionaries will come, and she basically took us through. And what was cool here is with Aliento de Vida is they also had these gift baskets for new mothers. And so not only were we praying for the sick, but we also got to pray if you see new mothers that had newborn babies. This was a new mother. This was a new mother. And so we got to pray with them, pray over their baby, pray a blessing over the family. And then Aliento de Vida, Joaquin's daughter, she was actually the one that would come in, and her name's Soul. She would come in. She's like one of the light, she's like literally sunlight when you meet a person, super bubbly type of personality. She's like the best person you want after you've had a baby to come into your room and greet you. She is the one that would come in and give it the gift basket after, right before we pray with them. So we get to pray with them, super receptive, and many of them not necessarily believers, but still open to prayer. And once again, we're sharing the good news of Christ with them as well, praying over their family. And then we see Mike and Heather praying over this man who I believe had schizophrenia. I think a couple of other things also going on. Homeless, schizophrenic, and I think they were about to transport him to another location, but we were able to pray over him as well, and so that's just another individual you see us getting to pray with. So then now we are moving here. So this is all the same day, by the way. So we, what was the first thing of this day now, if I can even remember? Yeah, thank you, yes. So we did the school that morning, served, were there praying and meeting up with students. Then we went to the hospital where we were feeding people and praying for people in the hospital. And then after that, for the first time, we go further down south than our team's ever done, and we actually go down 2 hours south of Acuna. And so we end up getting to Via Union, and so you can see a lot of us loaded up here in the van with some of the supplies we're taking. And at Via Union, we do another outreach event that evening. And this outreach event was super successful, partnering with a local church in Via Union. So this isn't one of the 4 primary churches, but we also are open to continuing to throw seed and expand, connect with other people when we can. And here we had, I think they counted around 80 children, and then most of these children had adults with them. And then many of the adults were scattered throughout this park area. So we're at an outdoor park facility in Via Union, and here we have preaching, we have games, we have supplies, food for families, and school supplies for kids, and just an awesome outreach opportunity. I got to preach once again here, and this sermon is where I preached Why Jesus. Those who were here Sunday, you got to hear that message, Why Jesus. That's what I preached to this community, and it was well received. And right afterwards, we had so many different kids, people that were claiming Christ as their Lord. I don't know how many of them are new converts, but so many of them are singing praises to Christ, are declaring a prayer to Christ afterwards. Then you see Jose and I here got out the animals, and the kids loved that as well. But that's what's awesome about, once again, Jose and Olga. Just thinking outside of the box of different things that they can do to connect with children and families and just make things fun for these kids. So we got to spend that evening there in Via Union, so a very, very full day. But then, since we're 2 hours away, we didn't go back to Del Rio, Texas, to the mission house. Rather, we ended up spending our final evening in an orphanage, which is right there a little bit more north now, but still really close to Via Union. And we stayed at an orphanage here. And in the orphanage, we happened to meet a pastor and his family that was also staying there at the same time. And so we got to know his family, their ministry a little bit. And he has a radio show that he does, that he basically just streams, and then he produces it, and he'll pre-record things, and then he'll put it up. And we actually had the opportunity on multiple occasions. I know that I got to record, Russ got to record, and then later some of our other people, like Jazz with her ministry, and Pastor Lorenzo and their church ministry, all of us got to put recordings out, which this gets connected to people in Mexico City, multiple different locations. There's also a connection that we got to make where they were requesting Bibles. We got to facilitate that because of this this contact, where we actually got to send Bibles to an area where they didn't have any Bibles and were desperately requesting them. So just by that encounter, we got to build a connection, and now there's also these videos of us with translations going out to different Spanish speakers that we never will probably meet in person. So really cool contact there, new audience, new people to build connections with. And then we also got to do things while we were at the orphanage. And so you see Mike had to cut out this wall here, and you see Jose and me on the other side, and we're working on their shower system. And there's a couple showers we were trying to work on there, as well as looking at electrical. And then while some of us were doing that, many of the women were working in the I believe the main cafeteria, and they were doing heavy, deep cleaning where they were doing it for hours. I know that I felt bad for some of them. They were exhausted by the end of the day. But we did all of that in the early morning at the orphanage, and then as well as giving them a pretty substantial financial blessing as well before we left, supporting and saying that we're so grateful for some of the directors of this orphanage of what they're doing there. And it's a really well-run orphanage and just really, really good quality of what they're able to offer these kids. So that was the main thing we got to do on that. That was a Thursday morning that we were serving and working at the orphanage, and then we had to drive 2 hours back before we head back the final Friday morning where we are driving for another 20 hours. So we wanted to rest a little bit Thursday evening before we headed back. But I did want to show you this. This is that area where we were in the community where we did the door-to-door evangelism. And this is people coming to that event after we went door to door. And this lady specifically was one of the ones that my team got to talk to and pray with. And she was someone who literally said that she was a believer, but she had been away from the church for a long time. And she was really receptive to wanting to go back into church. And we see her there praising Jesus that very night. So 2 nights later, she's there, and we see once again preaching, and we see them, offering some food and drinks and different items like that. And you just see that there's so many opportunities, so many connections, so many things going on there. And it's more than once again just doing one specific project or giving some money here, but it's just all of these things coming together and wanting to see fruit, wanting to see how you're seeing growth over time. And I think that our team we all saw Jesus working in so many different ways in our team and in Acuna and further beyond that as well. And so, I always kind of end with this, which, there's a funny picture of us, the 3 amigos. But I always like to say this is that this mission was complete, but we're still called to go therefore and make disciples. And that's just a reminder is that missions is not just in Acuna. It's not just over there to another nation. Rather, our mission is everywhere we go. And one of the devotions, we had a devotion at the end of each evening. And each evening we would have, a devotion where we just as a team would, decompress and relax and just be around God's word together. And the first devotion, I think it really kind of ran throughout the week of us thinking about this is think about every day as God appointing you for who is around you, where you're at, and why you're there. And be aware and looking, what is God doing? What is God leading you to do? What are these interactions? Because nothing happens by accident. We know God is sovereign, He's in control, and then we are there. We're called to be actively looking to see what is God doing, not only in Acuna, but right here in Carterville. And so that's my challenge and invitation for us as well as don't let missions just be there. Let it be wherever you go. Look, where can I pray? Where can I meet needs? Where can I give a gospel presentation? Because God is at work everywhere. And He just wants willing vessels that are going to go and share the good news.